to show leadership and technology by adapting. And so I appreciate the patience and the tolerance of all the members of the board. You will be pros before you know it, but I thought a good walkthrough, not just for you, but for the folks that are on our meeting. It looks like we have about 62 people total, which is probably one of the larger board meetings I've ever been to. So technology is knocking down walls. With that, I will turn it over to Ken Grant and Bob Ziegler to do the welcome, and then we can take roll.
Well, on behalf of the APRL board, I'd like to welcome everyone to the meeting, especially apparently we have a large number of non-board members who have joined us. So welcome.
Bob, are you on with us? I will take that as a no. I'm sure he's going to get on board with us, but for now, Steve and Melanie, if you wouldn't mind calling the roll for the APS and APRL.
Okay, for the APS, Bob Ziegler, president. No. Frisch Kaufman.
Here.
Jeff Shapiro.
Here.
Cheryl Gons.
Here.
Myself here. Bruce.
Here.
Rich.
Here.
Michael Bloom.
Here.
Peter. Peter. Okay. Mark Schwartz. Not yet. And Steve Reinhard.
Here.
Okay, Steve's here. So right now, Peter McCann and Mark Schwartz and Bob Ziegler have not signed in yet. All yours, Melanie.
Steve, it's Mark.
Oh, okay. Gotcha.
I couldn't join. Let's put it this way. I can see it. Oh God, I'm getting feedback.
Quick to the Lou
I
Gehrig
was
speech.
told, I tried to put my microphone on, but it said I'd been muted by the organizer, and I couldn't unmute it.
Know something we don't?
That's because you must not have used the link that you were sent last week to come in, and you came in.
Kathy, I tried using the link and it just sort of hung up.
Do you want me to send you a new link?
Send me a new link and I'll try that.
I'll try.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, the APRL roll call. Ken Grant.
I'm here.
Greg Galletti. Ken Nilsestuin. Hugh McMacken.
Here.
Tom Bianasek.
Hello, Melanie.
Hi, Tom. Hugh Lawrence.
Here, and my apologies for confusion the last hour.
Welcome, Hugh. Kristen.
Present.
All right, thank you.
All right, Steve, I will tell you that I believe most, if not all, of the APS staff are on. So for the purposes of the minutes, you can just identify me, Jeff Grant Weiss, and Kathleen Yurchek as attending, and then we'll say the rest of the APS staff, so you don't have to put all 30 plus names down.
Okay, got it.
Bob, have you made it onto the call yet? I'm going to take that as a no. I know, well, he was just here for our earlier meeting, so I'm sure that he'll join us as soon as he can. To move forward, Kathleen, I'll just defer to you for now.
Okay,
Scott, I think a lot of people are in the same position I'm in.
Okay, and that's why I did include contacts for everybody if they were having issues getting through. So hopefully they're contacting the 3 individuals on our staff that can help them get into the GoToWebinar.
Okay, well, why don't we start with my report? Boy, Scott, we started this year off with a bang. It seems like so long ago. In September 2019, Scott and I worked on Boston 2026. We were very forward looking. That seems like a long time ago when now we're looking at what next week will be. But we had time. The APS had obviously approved the location a while ago, but we had an agreement to do. So Scott and I worked along with the Boston organization on completing that. The second thing we worked on, also forward-looking, was, if you recall, we had an issue with term limits on the 2020 election, and the board was involved in our report on that, along with Bob, who's not on the call, determining what those term limits meant and who was able to run for re-election. We also worked on some very positive things for the APS. We had a positive for the APS, but ironically, maybe not everyone else. We had 2 estates that we worked on transitioning funds, a smaller one. I think his name was, let me look here, Ashman, the Ashman estate, and also the Albanese estate, a significant donation where we had some issues in, number 1, how we transitioned that money, and number 2, how that was allocated. Again, those were all, if we think back, it does seem like a long time ago, but all things that we worked very positively to get the organization in where it is now. I was happy to be able to meet Jeff, and we have been working on some leasing issues for the facility. We had a sale of a business, and so we had to assign the lease. We're working on getting that accomplished. Recently, before the coronavirus issues arose, we had some employee issues with changes in certain ways that employees were looked at. The Department of Labor had changed exempt employees, the definition of overtime, and Scott and I very carefully made sure that the APS was complying with those new classifications. Then what we're working on, as Scott said, is we're trying not to be overwhelmed with the things that are happening with the coronavirus, what to do with the employees, how to deal with the financials. I have to say that I am very impressed with, first of all, Scott's ability to understand and handle what the issues are, when to get me involved, and how to discuss those issues. So I think we've been perfectly teamed in moving forward on that to the best of our ability. So that, and the other thing on my list that right now has to take a back burner, if you remember, we had a timeline on how to deal with amending the bylaws, our policies, and our standing resolutions, because some of them needed to be updated. That's clearly on the back burner, but still in our thoughts. So we've had quite the year. Any questions? Okay, that could.
I have a question. Sorry, I had to unmute. This is Kristen.
Sure.
Any open cases from the past that are going forward, or is this not the place to talk about that, or is there nothing open at the moment?
No, there is. I know you always like to hear that, so I failed to say that. There are no litigation cases. I think we have enough to work on, so thank goodness there's nothing in that arena that we're dealing with. But
very good.
Yeah. Okay, Scott, that concludes my report.
Okay, thank you, Kathleen. I think Bob is listed as an attendee, but not necessarily a panelist. I have messaged Kathy to let her know that, but in case she's listening in, I know she's helping Mark Schwartz as well. And again, a reminder that we did create contacts because I expected there to be some growth issues with using this new platform, but I know that you'll all be very adept and experts by the time it's all over with. I think just to keep things moving, I'm going to go ahead and get to the presentation that I have put together. Kathy, if you wouldn't mind sharing, doing screen share with me so that I can go ahead and take it from here.
Sorry, I was on the phone with someone who can't get in, so it's on share.
Okay. So I want to go through, and I'll go back to an apology for the board first and foremost, because I did lay out a timeline, and if all things had been perfect, we'd be in San Francisco right now, which would have been a good start. And then we would be talking about a variety of issues that we had looked at. We were taking a very forward-looking approach to where we were at, and then a pandemic hit. And you know, for better or for worse, as it happens, I have some experience in dealing with crises. So hopefully what I lay out today is a very clear understanding of where we're going. You know, the horizon 18 months out is a little hard to see right now just because we've got so much in front of us. So, you know, I wanted to start with talking a little bit about where we're at. And I know that this is old news for some people, but you know, in times like this, there's no danger in over communicating. There's always a danger in under communicating. And so that's been my priority, is trying to be as open and transparent and as communicative as possible. So as we know, the operations are temporarily suspended. Governor Wolf closed non-life sustaining businesses on the 22nd of March 2020, so a little bit over a month ago. And he did announce that he had extended the order through the 8th of May, and that there was going to be a phased-in plan following that date. How that's going to affect the APS remains unclear. He's planning on targeting sectors. So for instance, he has announced that he's going to allow online car sales, which is something that hasn't been allowed till now. Construction in the Commonwealth can proceed. We've been one of 2 or 3 states that haven't been able to have any construction projects going on. You know, the impacted services directly for us are circuit and internet sales, expertising, and library. All of our operations obviously have been impacted in some way, but those 4 components of what we do at the APS really do require a lot more physical presence than many of the other things that we can do. For now, our plan is to be closed through the end of May. That's not a deliberate choice, but we think that it's better to err on the side of caution and be ready to be closed through the end of May. For those of you who live in Pennsylvania, you know this. For everyone else, just to share with you, we've seen an uptick in cases and we've seen an uptick in deaths that have occurred recently. And you know, even if you look at the White House plan for reopening America, one of the things that they have an expectation of in order for you to get to phase 1 is that you have to see a 14-day period where cases are declining. So the guidance from the federal government and the expectations at the state level are similar, and that is they want to make sure that your infection rate is on the decline, that you've bended the curve, as they call it. I need to stop here for a minute and point out for everybody that's attending who are not staff of the APS that for the first time probably ever, we have all or nearly all of our APS staff and APRL staff joining us for this meeting. And I want to thank them very much. We basically have turned the ship on a dime, which is a very hard thing to do. It has not been easy. It has required a lot of thought and a lot of work and a lot of planning. And I really do appreciate the fact that the staff has been flexible and adaptable to doing work at home rather than coming to the APC, that they have continued to serve the members of the APS. And I hope that that impact is felt by all of our members. And you know, that's something we're going to continue to work very hard at, not just in the past, but that is our goal for the future as well. Our highest priority, just to say it to them, is their safety and their health and safety of our staff, primarily, obviously our members and our guests. So how we proceed, what we think about, what we're thinking through is going to really be dictated by our ability to keep people safe in a time of a global pandemic, which is a huge challenge. So let's go through the affected services real quick. We are now accepting return circuits and payments. for circuit sales. We are also we're encouraged to send purchase and report sheets to the APS, mail in the next recipient when you can safely access the USPS. For those of you who are on the circuit, we want you to be safe first. So we absolutely don't want you to feel that you've got to run out to the post office if that's what you have to do to get that circuit onto the next one. But if you're going to keep it at home, please keep it safe and secure for us so that we can get that thing moving just as soon as things happen. In order to help accommodate that, we have waived all late fines for circuit sales so that you can retain that at home safely and securely, and that you don't feel a financial pinch to go out and get to the post office when it's not in your best interest to do that. For sellers, we have notified sellers as of last week that we're accepting. We have not started shipments back up again. One of the things that our sales team is working through right now is how are we going to be able to get these things restarted. We did have a club request, strangely enough, for circuits, which we have now fulfilled. That will be in the mail today. And we are getting requests for direct sales. So that's something that we're going to work through so that we, again, can make sure that we have the material safely and securely sent and safely and securely returned. But we definitely want you to be buying and selling. We also have had time now to put some of our own material in the books, and that will be included as well. For sellers who are expecting payment, I am sorry, but we are not able to process checks right now. That is a top priority for us when we're able to get the team back in and get those checks processed. We will get you caught up as quickly as possible. If you're running into issues with anything, though, please contact Wendy Mazzorti. I put her email address on there, and she is very responsive and notorious for waking up at like 4 o'clock in the morning and responding to emails. Not that that should be an expectation, but she does. For APRL, right now we are managing some research requests. It's very difficult, obviously, if there's a literature check that you have to do or a reference book that you have to grab, because we're not allowing staff back on site yet. This is a priority for us, though, to get that back and going again, because we know that there are a lot of folks working on things in their downtime, and all of a sudden, all those questions they've been dying to ask, they've started to ask, and so we want them to get that information as quickly as possible. We are able to fulfill requests, and as we are able to, we're certainly glad to do that. Book loans, obviously, again, we're not able to send them in. Same thing as we say with everything else. Don't feel compelled to send material back to us, but if you can, keep it safe and secure at home and get it through us. That's why we've waived late fees through the 1st of June for that as well. Now, for each of these late fee waiver periods, just to be clear about this, we can adjust this if we need to, but for right now, for our planning purposes, that's where we're at. So I want you to understand that at least you have at least until that long. And I know that people really want to get the books back in again, and very soon we'll be able to let you know when you can do that. For any questions, please contact our library staff. They do a job. They triage out the questions to all of the staff, and they are all working remotely and doing great work, and we appreciate what they're doing. Stamp Store. The good news is that Stamp Store is open for business, and we are strongly encouraging folks to stop by and visit, buy material. You're getting it from an APS member, and we have a wonderful guarantee process. We are accepting orders and payments are being processed, so it's not like you'll make a payment and credit card charge and then it'll sit there for a month. We are processing those payments. Shipments. Thanks to the creative work of our staff, we have figured out a solution to making sure that we can get material out the door. Now, typically under normal operations, Stamp Store runs on a next business day shipping, but right now we're running at no more than 2 weeks. But I really do appreciate the work the staff has put into making sure that we can get material out on a timely basis, although, again, not as usual, but I think they've done a good job of getting us up to speed. Refund policy, obviously we have a great 30-day return money back guarantee. That doesn't start until that shipment goes out. It's really on a 37-day cycle, not to get too deep into the weeds, but we allow for shipping time to you, and then but the toll starts as soon as we get it out the door. So it's not at the point of purchase, but at the point of shipping. So just to let folks know that. Sellers, we are accepting new submissions. They've done a great job of getting our scanning and our description writing done off-site, and I really do appreciate it because that allows us to continue to start posting new items back in again. So Wendy did communicate with sellers at Stamp Store, and I will say to all of you, You're sitting around, you found all your duplicates now, you've gotten all your collections organized, and you're ready to start selling. Please use Stamp Store. Get online, and if you want, then you can certainly get in touch with our staff to figure out what you need to do in order to make that happen. It is a wonderful service to our members, and we are happy to provide it. Checks will be delayed until reopening. This is our top priority, and something that I expect we will be able to get moving soon. So hopefully there won't be much more of a delay. Questions, again, not to overburden Wendy, but this is her department as well. Reach out to her. She is managing the questions, or she's getting them to someone on staff that can get back to you as quickly as possible. And they're very responsive to every inquiry that comes in. Expertising. This has been the most dramatically impacted office of all of the organizations that we have, because entering information, getting the certificates ready to go, and getting the patients out to the experts, processing certificates is really a lot more of an on-site process than many of the other things that we do. So we've not been able to issue new certificates. The good news is we are able to do all of the prep work to get to that point of submitting the certificate, getting it signed in, and getting that material back to you. We are working to get this back online again. My goal is that within the next 2 weeks, I am going to be able to start processing these certificates and get them back out to the customers and get them back into your hands so you can do what you need to do with them. Submissions, we are now going to start allowing new submissions. You'll see an announcement next week from Gary Lowe, but I did want to make sure that we shared that news today, that we're going to allow, we are allowing new submissions. They're not going to get very far in the process until we get to normal operations, but we are going to get them queued up so that we can start moving them out the door as soon as we're able. Experts, same thing. We're working to get that process restarted. We think that we're going to be able to have an ability to move those things out. We're still working through the details of what exactly that's going to look like, but I want to go ahead and start getting this ramped up as quickly as possible. We have a lot of eager people who want to make sure that they get their certs back, and we want to make sure that happens too. In the meantime, I want to assure everyone that the material is being safely stored, whether it's in the hands of an expert. Gary is in constant communications with all of our expert committee, making sure that, you know, there are no dangers in the material that they have. Many of them are starting to send stuff back to us. Here at the APS, we have incredible security, and it is all safely secured. And it would be quite an effort to get to it. So I just want to assure everyone that we are taking as much care as humanly possible for everything that we have on site. For questions, Gary Lowe and Crystal Harder are the team to get in touch with. Their emails are on the screen. Both very responsive. Crystal and Gary have been working round the clock to communicate with the experts, with the customers, and I do appreciate all that they're doing. Gary always likes me to share this message, so I put it on the screen so I don't forget to say it. We're ready to help. Please keep emailing questions. And so he's not lonely, but he's certainly happy to help you as much as he can. And for those of you who have been watching our stamp chats, you know that Gary's also been doing presentations on adventures and expertising and some other topics, primarily postal history, which is near and dear to his heart. So we do appreciate all the work that they're doing. Summer seminar. As it happens, summer seminar had to be canceled this year. But for 40 years straight, we have managed to have summer seminar, but we did have to cancel it. We've reached out to all the planned participants, and we were on track to have a very sizable group of people this year participate in summer seminar. Another one of those turning the ship on a dime moments is we are working on developing summer seminar online. Kathy, in a stamp chat on Tuesday, walked through some of the courses that will be available. The course catalog will be online very soon. I expect within the next week and a half, we'll have that up online. There'll be a combination of paid and free courses. So, there are paid courses where it's a very in-depth look at a topic, free courses that are related to APS services, APS items, work that we're doing. For those of you who attend summer seminar, the online version is going to be decidedly cheaper than what you would normally spend for tuition to come to summer seminar. The proceeds for that event will help us offset the losses from the cancellation of summer seminar. We usually show a little bit of a cash positive. Last year, we generated about $20,000 in sale of donated material between the stamps and the APRL and the books that we sold through the APRL. So we are going to miss that. But I want to remind everybody, you don't have to be here to buy from us. So keep talking to us about what you're looking for, and we're happy to help you in every way that we can. Great American Stamp Show. We're still planning to go forward with that. Right now, one of the things that we're working on, and this is a challenge for a lot of different organizations across the country, most of them have taken you have to tell us that you can't come or that we can't come approach, because there are always complexities in the contract in terms of cancellations that they want to avoid. We're in that same boat. We're working with the convention center and staff and local officials to monitor the situation, keep aware of any events and updates that are happening through the Commonwealth or through the state of Connecticut. And we're going to work on understanding as quickly as possible what's happening. Right now we have about 90 dealers, and it's funny because what we'll do is we'll hear from a dealer who basically says something along the lines of, I'm not comfortable coming to the show given what's happening out there. And then, the next day, Ken will get a call from someone who says, I haven't done a stamp show in a month, and I'm really starting I really want to be at Hartford now. So every time we lose one, we pick one up. So there's a little bit of the back and forth. Normally, in advance of the stamp show, we start reaching out to dealers just to make sure that they didn't misplace the contract. We didn't reach out to them. They forgot to get in touch with us, and typically we'll pick up more dealers. If we're locked into a trajectory to do this, we're definitely going to do that outreach with dealers. So I expect that number to grow. One of the things that I have to do, and we'll start doing this very soon, is there's a lot of different moving parts to a show. And so what I want to do is put together a working group that can think through all of the different challenges we have. Obviously, our attorney will be one of them. Ken Martin will be one of them. But, people like Liz Heisey, who is a chair of our judging committee, it will be able to help us think through, how should we handle the Champion of Champions? What do we do with the exhibits? What if these different things have to happen? So we'll be bringing different folks into the queue to talk a little bit more in detail about what that show is going to look like. And we want to start developing a plan and communicating regularly on that show, so that people don't, the common question is, are you still going to do it? We want to get over that hump and into, if we're doing it, this is what it's going to look like, or we think that this might be the case. So we want to make sure that we're communicating with the public. Obviously, our major guidance in doing all of this is the health and safety of the members, the guests, and dealers and staff. We take that very seriously, and I think you all know that, but I always like to repeat it just so that people know that. Membership. So we're still accepting applications online and by mail. We are doing our dead level best. We get our applications printed out, and then we get them entered in. Sometimes there's a day or two lag, longer than normal. Usually it's within 24 hours, you're officially a member of the APS. It may take 2 days instead of 1, just to let everybody know that. New applications received. I want to be honest with you, there certainly has been an impact. The first 2.5 months of the year, we were going like gangbusters. We were picking up new applications. We were picking up, reinstatements. We were getting a lot of energy towards meeting that 2020 challenge that we started the year with. Obviously, the global pandemic has had an impact on new applications. And so for anybody listening, whether you're a board member, staff member, or just an APS member, I have said this repeatedly. We are offering a lot of really great things on the website right now. Free access to the magazines, free access to a lot of information, participating in the stamp chats. And we have picked up members as a result of that. Please share this information with people. Push them a little bit just to test us out and see what the APS has to offer. And I think that they'll see that there's a value in being a member of the organization. To date, we have received 419 new applications. Compared to 490 at the end of April last year. So we still have about a week and a half. So for those of you who love to recruit to the APS, now's the time to help us get caught back up again, at least to where we were last year. And please be a recruiter throughout the year. If you need help, advice, you have questions or whatever else, please get in touch with Ken Martin. And I know most of our members know Ken very well, and he will be a help. We'll get you all of the resources and information. The one interesting thing is reinstatements for this year are decidedly better than they were last year. So as you can see, we picked up 210 former members who've now come back again. I think that the downtime has re-sparked their passion for stamp collecting, given them some time, and so as a result of that, they've decided to come back into the fold for reinstatements. As I always remind people, even though about half of our members pass away, you know, the membership loss that we face each year is contributed to death. There's still about 25% of the members who are still active collectors. They just have left the APS for a variety of reasons, but we're glad to welcome them back. And for anybody listening who is a reinstated member for this year, welcome home. And I hope that you're here for a while to come. Non-paid right now, we do our membership drop at the end of April. For full transparency, I had planned to move the drop to the end of March, and we were well on our way to being, we were on target for, and going to be slightly below at the rate we were going, of getting people back into the APS, get them to pay their dues, and then we wouldn't have to do such a large membership drop. At the end of April last year, we dropped 2336. Right now, that is about 2312. This number is 2 days old, so I suspect that we just sent one more reminder out. So I know that we're getting people who are paying their dues now who are like, oh, I forgot, for any number of reasons. We just to let everybody know, we send 2 letters and 3 emails out to remind people to renew their dues. It is a grueling process to remind people to pay. And so anything that any of you can do to help make that easier, it would be greatly appreciated. I mean, we want to serve you. We don't want to keep reminding you that you need to renew your dues. We do, but it would be great if we could get that number down even further. Under 25 or under 30 membership, we started the 25 for 30 membership this year. That's a digital only 12-month membership. So for traditional APS members, you start in June or January, and then it expires in December, or you pay on a graduated scale if you're joining at some point during the year. In this case, we decided to try something a little bit different. So we're doing an online membership that is a full 12 months. So if you join today, for instance, then your membership would expire on May 1st of next year. So we're trying to introduce something else, and we're trying to encourage younger members to get involved. One of the things that we've experienced, you know, we planned this membership last year, but one of the things that we've experienced in doing the stamp chats is we're really starting to identify millennials that are very active and eager to get engaged in the hobby. They're not necessarily interested in doing it the way that tradition has dictated. So the stamp chats, the digital media, all of the work that we've done there has really brought to fore people that we hadn't met before. So that's an encouraging development that comes with what we've been doing. Managing our finances. I love this quote from Benjamin Disraeli, who was a Prime Minister of the United Kingdom. I am prepared for the worst, but hope for the best. In my experience, that is probably the best way to be. It's easier to make adjustments toward your favor than it is to take them even further away. And so, especially when it comes to managing money and budgets. So we'll start with the payroll protection program. I think many people are familiar with what this is. Thanks to the quick action of the APS Board of Directors, we have applied and we have been approved for the PPP, the payroll protection program. We submitted the application the first day it was open. If you're tracking the news, you know that Congress is in the process of authorizing additional money for that program because the number of applications outpaced the available amount of money that they had. As it happens, we got our application in early. We were approved thanks to First National Bank as well for their support in helping us get through that process. It's a great relationship we've developed with them over the years, and it paid off for us here. The purpose of the program is, because of its, obviously by its name, is to retain staff. And so that is what we're going to do. Over the next 2 months, we are able to use those funds to make payroll, pay for benefits, cover some of the expenses that go into having someone on staff, you know, local taxes, things like that, pay for healthcare, just to be clear, and other items. Not all of the loan we expect is going to be needed. We'll also pay for rent, utilities through the APS. It's, you know, based on the guidance we've gotten, the program is forgivable. And so we do expect, based on all of the constraints we have on the money that we're going to use, that we will in fact meet the expectations of forgiveness. So I think that we're in good stead to be able to help use that to ease the budget pressures. Now, for calculating what you're eligible for a loan, payroll was the chief driver of that. And so for the APRL, we have a single employee that's paid by the APRL. And so we didn't seek funds because honestly, the cap would not have been nearly to the same degree that it would have been for the APS. So we felt like we were, and we look at the rental revenue that's coming in, even with the vacant space, we believe we're still able to maintain our track record of making the accelerated payments that we've all agreed to since the Albany's estate last year. We will look at other options as well in terms of the APRL operations, but we feel better overall about where things stand there than the challenges we see with the APS. Repayments are low risk. If they're not forgiven, they have to be paid back. We have a 6-month window to seek forgiveness, so we will do that once we get through the 2-month period of payment for staff benefits, payroll, things like that. I do think, again, we're going to restrict the use of that money to those very specific things. There are some other conditions in terms of, not cutting salaries and things like that have to be met. We don't expect there to be any challenges. We think it's very low risk that we will not be forgiven. But if we do have to repay the loan, the terms are 2 years at 1% interest.
Scott, question. Scott?
Yes.
Question. Why, going back to that slide, why wouldn't all of the approved loan be needed? That you have that statement in there. I don't quite understand.
So the calculation, the limit was based on payroll expenses calculated over the prior year. So under the payroll expenses of the prior period, our eligibility was for about 333. Our actual need for those funds to cover the things that I outlined is about $45,000 less than that. It's just a quirk in the program, though, that you're approved for a loan based on a formula. And when we submitted for that, it had nothing to do with what we would need for the next 2 months. It had to do with what we've spent over the last couple of months. And in part of that period, we had Rick Banks and Jeff Krantwise on salary at the same time. So some of it's just a quirk in the formula, but we want to make sure that it's not going to be about how much money we get, but how we spend the money we have. And if we don't use all of that money, we revert it back to the bank. So it automatically eliminates off the liability either way.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Sure. Okay. Closures affected revenues, which will put pressure on our budget. We are running a pro forma budget, which we will call a projection budget from here going forward. So starting in March, we developed a budget that would show actual performance for the period that we know, project out where we see things going. Our goal is to run manage a balanced budget, operational budget for the year. What that means is the things that we control, because obviously in our financial statements, there are things such as how the stock market is doing, how our investment funds are doing there, things like depreciation, interest expenses. Those are, for lack of a better word, less controllable than how much we're paying in payroll, how much we're spending on different items. So we want to focus very much on the operational budget for right now. Traditionally, that is not how we do business, and that's why we're producing the financial statements as we normally do, so that we can get the big picture of how our organization is doing health-wise. But I wanted to make sure that just looking specifically at operations, we're able to understand and see what's happening and what are the risks to being able to run a balanced budget for the year. Some of our current assumptions, now there's a long list, but some of our current assumptions are that we would have no revenue for circuit and internet sales in the months of April and May. We already know that's not true, but we wanted to take a very hardline position so that, again, it gave us an opportunity to be pleasantly surprised at some of the changes in the numbers over the next couple of months. We assume a 15% loss in circuit internet sales over the rest of the year. While I've got a captive audience here, let me just remind you, both of those provide great deals that you're supporting an APS member, you're supporting the APS, and you're getting material all at the same time. If that's not a three-way win, I don't know what is. And so I really would encourage you, if you haven't participated in circuit sales, either as a seller or a buyer, this is a perfect time to do it. Same thing with internet sales. If you haven't participated as a seller or a buyer, now is the great time. And so please get in touch with our staff. Please get online and look at our website and make sure that you're doing those things. It can really help make a difference. If there's no other way that you can help us, then really just participating in these programs can be a help to us. We expect a 25% loss in expertising. Now, again, that may be a much worse scenario than what we actually experienced. But again, I'd rather be wrong because we went too hard than wrong because we didn't go hard enough. We added another 1,200 members to the loss number. We had projected about a 640 loss for this year. We added another 1,200 in there. The reason for doing that, though, is because when we looked at 2008, and although the circumstances are different, we did see a substantial loss in a 3-year period starting in 2008. We were losing over 2,000 members a year. And so we don't want to get back to that point. And that's part of the reason why we've been so responsive. We want to make sure that we're present in the members' lives and that we're helping fill the gaps in their time, because we want to make sure that they appreciate the value. Interesting fact, though, for 2008 was the last time we raised the dues, and that's not something we're looking at doing. So we want to operate within the confines of the budget we have. We are now projecting a loss for the Great American Stamp Show. I think the risk of that being real is low, but it is a risk nonetheless, and one that we have to take into account until the pictures clear up a little bit. It's a bit of a challenge to try to predict the future when there are so many different people who are influencing that, and you're not one of them. So we're sort of taking a step back and have to take a bit of a wait and see attitude. We are trying to get to a communications point so we can keep people engaged about what's happening, but we do have to understand it could have an impact on the budget. All things being considered with the APS budget, we are currently projecting about $125,000 shortfall for the year. Now, we have been working to make adjustments to our spending and our expenses. There will be no staff travel. There are some part-time folks that we had planned to pay. We're not paying right now. There are contracts that we can look at and say, this isn't really central to what we're doing for our members, and so we can get rid of those things. So we're continuing to accumulate those savings, and our leadership team continues to scrub their budget every day to look at different ways of doing that. As time moves forward, I think we'll see those expenses won't be as great. But again, we have to be prepared for the worst case scenario. There are a lot of things that we don't know yet, and we got to be able to plan on looking at all of those things. So, by the time we get the April financials done, we'll be able to run another revised version of that projections budget so we can sort of get a sense of where we see things going. We are not working month to month. We're working day to day in terms of looking at ways to save money. But in terms of getting a formal, a semi-formalized presentation, that's what we're looking at in terms of management of time. Our priorities: maintaining member services, increasing revenues by replicating normal operations. In the current environment, since we cannot bring folks back in, or we are going to have to be limited in the way that we do those things, we're looking at ways to try to replicate our normal operations, not by doing it the way that we always do it, but by doing it in a way that makes sense and allows us to get our services back up and running. Reducing unnecessary expenses and increasing efficiency. I'll repeat the goal again. Managing a balanced operating budget is our goal for 2020. We don't have the same horizon we're used to, and nor do I encourage us to sit here and try to think about 18 months out when we're not really sure what 2 months out looks like. Staffing, this has been asked of me a lot, so I just want to state this for the record, and since all of our staff is listening, here's what you need to know. We have no current plans to reduce our staff. This is really our last option. We are trying to avoid that at all costs. Under the conditions of the payroll protection program, we cannot reduce staff anyway, but that's not a federal mandate. This is a policy goal for me, is to be able to retain the staff, stay as strong as we can in order to deliver the services we expect. We do have a cash surplus of unencumbered dollars. We always have to be careful about that. I know folks have heard the stories about Harvard and Stanford and so forth having these very large trust funds. They deal with the same issues we do, though, which is they're not necessarily in control of all of those dollars. The donors are the ones who dictate the terms of the agreement. And if the donors don't want you to use the funds for general operating, then it's not accessible to you. So if folks look at our financials and they say, gosh, these people have a lot of money, that is true to some degree, but bear in mind there are donor restrictions that we have to live with. And so in terms of available cash, we do have money available, and we want to use that as a last ditch effort to avoid a problem at the end of the year. So we don't want to get into a crisis situation like we did in 2008, but we want to try to keep that money available to us to help us be able to carry us through into 2021. Here's what I'll remind folks: APS Cares is a fund that we established that is, aimed specifically at that sensitivity, because again, our two goals are running a balanced operating budget and trying to keep our strength in terms of an organization. If you are interested in, and thank you to all of the people who've made donations. You give what you can, and it means so much to our staff that you've made donations to the APS Cares. It's still an education effort for those of you who don't get to visit the website very often. Please do. There's some fascinating interviews that are going up. Aaron Siemens, who's in our development office, has been talking to all of the staff, talking to them a little bit about themselves personally, and also how they've been serving our members in this time off. And so you get a little bit more of a personalization story about the people that work hard for you on a day-to-day basis. And I know them and I love them, and I know a lot of folks on this phone call do, but I really want to make sure that their story gets out there so that you do understand how you're supporting the APS and who you're supporting at the APS. We've raised about $15,480. We're sensitive to the fact that there's a lot of competing needs right now. One of the things we know is happening is they're doing relief for people directly affected by COVID-19, for people who are working on the front lines. We do respect that, and we don't want to step over those efforts. So we're trying to be very sensitive about that. But believe me, given the financial circumstances, every little bit helps. If you can write a $25 check, please do. If you can write a $250 check, please do. If you can write a $3,000 check, please do. The staff really appreciates the vote of support that they've gotten from these folks. I don't want to speak for them, but since they can't pipe in here, then I will do that for them. So what are the X factors, the biggest X factors we have to be concerned about? Well, the economy. We don't even have a firm grasp. We have never been in a situation like this before where there's been such a radical set of brakes applied to economic output. Projections on the GDP, at least through the rest of this year, suggest that we might see an economy that contracts at 3 times the rate it did in 2008 with the global meltdown. And if that's an indicator of where things are going to go, I have concerns. And I think that is going to affect the APS. And so we're trying to keep an eye on that as well. The second thing is the CDC, the director of the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention made some very stark statements on Tuesday. Now, he tried to soften the edge on that a little bit, but one of the issues he raised is the possibility that there's a seasonality to this. And when we get into the fall where we have flu, we may also see this exacerbate that problem. Experts have constantly, said that when we start easing the restrictions on travel and other things, you're going to see a bend back up again of the infection curve. And so we have to do everything that we can in order to make sure that that doesn't dramatically affect the hobby, or if it is affecting the hobby, that we're responding to it. Back to business. This is critical. We don't want to suddenly get to the point where we're able to open back up again and we don't have a plan. So the closure order is through the 8th of May. Our expectation is that the Governor Wolf will phase in by sector and by geography. I've looked at his plan. It doesn't offer any more detail than what you've seen in public reporting. So until we get more concrete plans, we are just going to plan to be closed as an organization, at least on site until the end of May. Public access, for sure, even if we're allowed to open the doors after May the 8th, we really want to restrict public access until we are sure that we have all the things that we need in order to keep people safe, both on the staff and the visitors who are coming. So we're going to follow the guidance of the public, the Department of Health and the Centers for Disease Control. But I have good news. We've established an internal working group. We call it the Back to Business Committee. It is comprised primarily of the directors who are going to be who've been the most affected by this, and are also going to help us get things back online again. So we're going to be thinking through a couple of different things in terms of staff, only staff essential to on-site operations. And even if their role is dependent on being on site for their work, it doesn't mean that they're going to be here 5 days a week, 7.5 hours a day. What it means is that we want to start working through the schedule of making sure that they're here when they need to be, and then working remotely when they can. The priorities are going to be getting our revenue generators back online as close to 100% as we can, as quickly as possible. So we'll focus on circuit sales, expertising, internet sales, and the library. Procedures that we have to think through. What are our personal protective equipment needs? You know, whether that's gloves or face masks or face shields or whatever else. You know, cleaning guidelines so that we are keeping this place safe. All the touch points that could carry the virus are mitigated. Our space needs. How far apart do we need to be? How far apart do we need to sit? And looking at staggered work hours as a way of making sure that we don't put people in jeopardy by having them too close, keeping that good social distance. And then thinking through public access. How is that going to look? I think we'll probably look at the size restriction requirements. You know, right now we're looking at about 10 people. That's sort of the governor's thinking. So no more than 10 people in a building. Well, you know, if that's the case, then I'm really uncomfortable with opening it up to the public. And so we probably won't do that. Delivery date for the plan, although based on the movements and the conversations that I've picked up on already, I don't think it's going to take this long for us to have the plan, but we expect to have a plan in place and ready to go before even the possibility of reopening the building. And so I appreciate all the folks who volunteered to serve on that committee. You're doing great work for the APS. The APS response. So, and I talk about this in the May column. I know everyone on this reads my column, so I don't need to spoiler alert for you, but there's a quote that John Kennedy used to use, and it's the Chinese use 2 brush strokes to write the word crisis. One brush stroke stands for danger and the other for opportunity. In a crisis, be aware of the danger, but recognize the opportunity. That's been translated more often than not in the crisis equals opportunity. The problem is he was dead wrong. There is no, the word for crisis doesn't represent that. What it means is danger and avoidance. And I always have enjoyed the cliched use of it, but it does have a sentiment that's worth thinking about. Are there opportunities for us in this environment, and what are we doing about that? For those of you who know, I once worked for a governor who disappeared for 5 days, and he was hiking on the Appalachian Trail, a coin that I phrased, and I'm sorry to this very day about that. But one of the things that I learned in my 8 years in the governor's office is in the midst of a crisis, solve the crisis. Now, it was a well-worn phrase before we got to June of 2009 when the governor disappeared and came back, but it is one that I have often lived by. And what that means is that the danger often when you get to a situation like this is to look for an escape hatch or a blame. And those are the 2 things that we have to walk away from, and instead focus on how we're going to solve the crisis and the challenges it presents right now. We're going to do this. We're going to make it through this. This organization will come back through this stronger than it was before we started. I don't mean for that to sound like a cliche. I promise you this is true. But first we have to respond and not react, which means we cannot sit around and wait for the world to come to us. We have to go out into the world. So how do we respond? In short, what we call this as a right now strategy, and that is set aside all the planning that you've done, and that's counterintuitive, but when you're dealing with a crisis, you focus on the here and now, and then the horizon starts building out from there. Communication. We have always been reticent to send more than 1 email a month to our members because we don't want folks to unsubscribe. I have thrown that doctrine out the door, and I have basically said we're going to communicate as often as we need to in order to make sure that every member of the APS can find out what's going on as quickly as possible. If you do not communicate enough, if you cannot provide answers, someone will provide them for you. And the biggest danger of all is letting somebody else define what's happening at the APS or for the APS rather than the folks who actually know what's going on. So I apologize to anybody on the call who hates all the emails they get from us. I want you to understand why we're doing it. And I want you to appreciate that we're trying very hard to keep you up to date because you have invested money in this organization. You've invested time and you've invested trust. And so we want to return that by making sure that we are clear in our communications, we are transparent, and we are responsive to people out there. Message, refine it as the situations change. Don't just create a message and stick to it. We want to be transparent. We want to make sure that people know what's happening, good news and bad. And it's difficult sometimes to deliver that bad news, but you've got to be clear and honest. Define goes back to what I said before. We have a lot of resources at our availability, thanks to the members of the board and the members of our organization who have helped us invest in an infrastructure that is much different than the one that I came to when I got here in 2015. We can deliver messages. We don't have to rely on someone else to be our messenger. And so we are going to utilize all of those tools. Risk assessment. Part of what I talked about with the budget is what we'll do with a lot of different things, and that is really understanding what our short, our mid, and our long-term challenges are. We have gathered groups together, like our Dealers Advisory Council, and try to get from them a sense of what's happening out there and what we can be doing for dealers. Same thing with Chicago 2021. Even though we're looking at a show that's more than a year away, we have to start figuring out what we're going to do now. We have met with the ambassadors group. Anybody on this call who is an ambassador that has not joined one of our ambassador meetings, please do. Please tell us what's happening in your club. Please tell us what's happening with your membership. Please tell us what we need to be doing. We are trying to reach out to you. And if you can't make those opportunities, we certainly understand that, but please don't disconnect yourself from the APS. We are here to serve our clubs and our chapters, and we know you're going through a difficult time, and we want to be here to support you so that you can do better than that. We're connecting with members directly. We have stamp chats that are both related to philatelic topics and to practical sides of things, but we also provide information. Our directors, and I'm very proud of them for doing this, had a stamp chat this week where we provide the information. The good news is if you can't make those, then by all means, we record them and post them up on YouTube. So please go to our YouTube page and look at all of the past stamp chats that we've done. A lot of good information is there and a lot of good talks are there. And honestly, I hope it makes you want to come and visit us in real time. So what should our actions be for 2020? And this is very important because, again, we know we're dealing with the here and now, but we've got to think through the rest of this year. So obviously our number one goal is to resume normal operations as quickly and as responsibly as possible. I say it that way because, again, we don't have to go back to doing things exactly the way that we used to do them. We have to be able to get the same outcomes that we had before. And so I wanted the staff to listen to this because I want to make that clear to them and clear to you that our expectation shouldn't just be, I'm going to show back up at the office one day and I'm going to work 5 days a week. We absolutely have to be flexible. We absolutely have to adapt because, unfortunately, we're not talking about a 1 month, a 2 month, or even a 3 month crisis. We are talking about a 2-year problem. And so in order to get through that issue, we have got to be flexible. And so I know our staff has been, and I know that they will continue to be. And so I really appreciate that. But I want to get operations back as quickly as possible. Strengthen our operational plan for futures events. Part of the reason why I want to establish a working group is to start taking over the momentum of the events that are happening and really make sure that people are aware of what's going to be happening with the Great American Stamp Show. The other event that we have this year in October is the Postal History Symposium, where we're working with the U.S. Philatelic Classic Society. We, the APRL, and the U.S. Philatelic Classic Society will be doing that event, hopefully in October. So that's something that Scott Tiffany has been doing some outreach. We're going to have to be much more aggressive about that. I know Wade Sadi's on the phone, so I'll put that bug in his ear that, this is something we've got to be aggressive about. We want to make sure that the people who intend to visit us are able to do so and can enjoy themselves rather than pondering, when are these people going to tell me what's going on? Let's revisit our 2020 priorities. I mean, one of the things that I had to put to the wayside right now is a review of the policies and the governance issues that we've been dealing with, and because they're just not in the way of us making progress. If they were a clear and present danger, I'd have them all out on the table and we'd be looking at them, but they're just not a problem for us right now. And so we shouldn't bring them up in order to create problems we don't have, because we have plenty of problems to deal with. And so, my goal is to figure out how we're going to meet with our members, how we're going to be direct. We've got to be where they are. And if it comes to it, we've invested in this somewhat, but we need to be more aggressive about it. Is we need to adapt and create new skills for our staff. And I want to make sure that we're investing in that. So that's the thing we're going to start working on and thinking through. We have to continue to build out our digital capacity. One of the things that we launched this week is the Adopt a Book program through the APRL. The idea is to start pushing toward that digitization goal that goes beyond providing journals and then to start providing literature. What we've realized is geography isn't the only problem. The threat always is apparent. And we have an amazing set of resources that the membership of this organization and the membership, the supporters of the APRL have invested incredibly into. And it is a terrible idea to think that I alone am standing in the library of our building right now and no one else can. And looking at 2 stories worth of books. We can do this. Scott has worked very aggressively to position us that way. And thanks to the support of our membership, we can. Evaluate all revenue and fundraising opportunities to make sure that they're aligning with the mission changes. So that is, if we've put an emphasis on a certain program and it's really just no longer relevant, then I think we need to take our focus off of it and figure out how we are getting people to invest in the outcomes we're looking for. So you will start hearing different messages come out of us about the way that we do things, whether it's about the way that we structure our payments for different operations or how we're going out and doing fundraising. Again, we're trying to be very sensitive to the current environment, but we are a 501c3 organization, and fundraising has to be part of our mission. How can you help? Now, this is addressed to the board, but it's also addressed to anybody that's on this discussion today. I say this often, please, first and foremost, take care of yourself. While you're in-house, for those of you who are, there is no better stress reliever from the current environment than organizing your stamps. We're seeing younger people who've been quarantined at home starting to pick up on the hobby. And so it's really encouraging to know that a classic stress reliever is getting a new look from a younger generation. Well, let me stop for a second and say this. We have APS members who are still active in their community right now, who are working on the front lines, who are serving customers and all of us and making sure that we can stay safe at home. And for those folks, you have our gratitude. I'd love to hear those stories. That's one of the things that we want to be able to share with people, is to make them aware of the heroes we have within our own organization. And so if you're a doctor, if you're a nurse, if you're, I know we have utility workers who are out there doing the job every day. Thank you very much for that. And please share those stories with us. Stay in touch with your philatelic friends. There's a lot of isolation going on right now. One of the encouraging trends I've seen for stamp clubs and other organizations is the readily available adaptation to technology. That without this crisis, that would have been a much longer bend. But given the circumstances, necessity is the mother of invention. And so we are seeing people adapt to technology. Take advantage of this time, though, to reach out to somebody who might be living alone, or, to be honest with you, I've had phone conversations with members who are taking care of a spouse who has the terminal illness or, isn't nearly as responsive. And so even though they've got someone in the house with them, they're still alone. And so, there's a value in that connection and that conversation, just making sure they're doing okay, making sure that they're engaged and that we can look out for them, because we are a community. Even if we take pride in how isolated we are, even when times like this don't come, we really have to be connected right now. And so whatever we can do to help keep that community strong, we're gonna do. Volunteer to present a stamp chat. We have daily stamp chats, sometimes 2 a day. And for those of you on our board who have wonderful philatelic knowledge or are just a personality and want to be able to connect with our members, please step up and volunteer. It would really help us if we can provide good content for our members on a daily basis, and really building a library of that information to go back to over the next year. And so we want to be able to keep hooking in people to the hobby. One of the best ways we can do that is through these stamp chats, which we then turn into a video product that we put up on YouTube, free to everyone. And we've seen a substantial jump in our recruitment. Tom Lobig's on the phone. He kind of made a crack. We had about 100 subscribers to our YouTube page, and we're over 1,000 now. So we're on our way to building an audience, and we're going to continue to do that. Think about that. We've added, 900, almost 1,000 people in a month. And, we just keep moving in that direction. We've got to do that. The American Philatelist, there's never a bad time to write an article, but if you're at home, if you're just whittling away the days, now's the time to put together those thoughts and write them into the APS, into the AP. Trish, you're off the hook. you contribute regularly to the magazine, and we appreciate that. But for the rest of you, if you have time and you have a passion for a subject, connect with Tom Lobig and Susanna Mills, let them know, and you'll find Susanna is a treasure to work with. I can't believe she puts out the work that she does. Connect with her, and believe me, you'll end up with a product that looks great. You'll feel great about it, and people will tell you for years to come, I love that article you wrote in the AP. And I want you to get that praise too. We have momentum with online education, but it goes back to similar to the stamp chats. Stamp chats are limited to an hour. So we do usually a 30, 45-minute chat, and then we do Q&A. You know, with online education, we can do something longer and more substantive. So if you have an 8-hour slide presentation on a varying subjects within British philately, then we want to hear about it. We're not going to put it into a stamp chat, but we can produce an online course. Dr. Brackbill and Kathleen Edwards are doing a wonderful job right now of building up our library in C3A, our online education platform, building out Summer Seminar Online. But this is where we're going. This is the momentum that I've been dying for, and finally we've gotten to. And so please volunteer to teach an online course. You can do it in real time too. Stamp Club meetings. Now, he didn't ask me to bring this up, but I'll give a shout out to Bruce Marsden, who, as a member of the Golden Gate Stamp Club, I'm familiar with the activities that are going on out there in San Francisco. Last week, I joined them for a Zoom chat, but to be candid with you, it's hard for an East Coaster to work all day and get to a 10 o'clock Stamp Club meeting online. And so, this week just happened to be a particularly bad day for me to be able to do it. But Bruce was their first presenter. So all the way over here in Pennsylvania, Bruce projected over to San Francisco and did a wonderful talk, as I understand it, based on the reports we got from the club. Tuesday of next week, I finally get to visit a club I joined when I got here, the Tidewater Stamp Club, which is located in the same town that I graduated from high school. So I finally get a chance to meet all of these folks that I grew up around, including seeing, I hope, my old social studies teacher, who was the former president of that club. We can be ambassadors right now at a greater degree than we've ever been before, because technology closes the globe tremendously. Some of you know that we've had presenters from the United Kingdom, from India, from Australia, do stamp chats with us, and it has been fun and really great. And that will continue. Our international presence has been phenomenal, and it's continuing to grow. And so I want to thank Heidi Lockhart Rhodes, who's our ambassador for the Stamp Chat program. She is the hostess with the mostest, and she's working very hard to adapt to the new technology we've laid out there. But please, I encourage you, reach out to clubs, volunteer to come and speak, let them know what's happening at the APS, talk about a philatelic subject that you love. I know that they'll appreciate it, and I think it will be goodwill for us as an organization. APS member dealers, I can never say this enough. We have the largest database of member dealers in the country. We work very hard to keep that updated so that if they're selling online, if they're selling through eBay, if they're selling through Stamp Store, wherever they are, you know how to get in touch with them and connect with them. So for dealers on the phone, please update your information. You're about to get a newsletter from us reminding you again of that. But we want to be champions for dealers right now. And I've mentioned this in past board meetings, and I'll mention it now. What's really interesting is, as we make changes to the website, one of the things that we've been doing is we've been changing logos, adding pictures for the dealers. And every time we do that, we see an uptick in traffic. Just this past week, we saw an uptick in traffic. So we're getting about 2,000 people a week uniquely who are visiting our dealer website. That is as good as being at a single day. That's better than being at a single day of our stamp show. My goal is to keep building that audience, building that traffic. That's part of the reason why we do the stamp chats and a lot of other things. But whatever we can do to support the dealers. And we've also put together some very attractive advertising packages for them that will put them in front of people that they wouldn't be able to see otherwise. And hopefully that's going to be to their benefit as well. So in conclusion, I always share my information, my contact information. I try to be visible, accessible to every member of the APS. My mailing address, I love letters, and I love sending letters back again. And so for those of you who only deal with letters, you might not be watching this if you were, but I always accept mail, and I always respond in kind. Email, scott@stamps.org. Many of you know I respond morning, noon, and night. I don't work, you don't get emails back from me between 8:30 and 5. I want to make sure that we're accessible to our members as often as I can. I do try to sleep a little bit, so I apologize if I don't respond to a 3 a.m. email, but I work very hard at keeping my inbox down, knowing that I've responded to every member in a timely manner. My phone works. I'm not necessarily always by my desk, so please leave a message and I will get back to you. When you're in politics, you have a rule: you are responsive. You always get back to folks within 24 hours, and that is always my goal, and that's a stated goal for the staff as well. While you are all listening, this is my expectation because this is what I do. 24 hours is usually the limit on that. Don't let time pass for people who are paying our bills, and I really value the support we receive from our members. So with that, just remember, we're going to make it through this. I really do believe that. I'm not just trying to pump sunshine to keep you all happy for today. We are going to do this. It's going to be hard work, but for the members of the board, for the members of our society, thank you very much for your patience and your support and all you're doing for the hobby. I am seeing some really neat things going on right now, and I can't say thank you enough. With that, questions, comments, or suggestions, we're certainly willing to take them.
I do have one question comment that came from James Capel. He writes, youth membership should look at sending snail mail newsletters out, as I know young people are not allowed to go online by themselves until they are a bit older. The need is greater to reach preteen youths, but to keep the need for preteen members have to be on the internet for any information. The youth membership fee should be listed on the same sites that has the prices of the adult membership listing.
Well, Ken's listening. I'm sure he's taking notes right now. I mean, that's certainly something for us to look at. James was on our ambassador call last night, and I appreciate all the feedback he gave us there. Obviously, I don't want to dampen the enthusiasm, but it's really hard for us to generate a newsletter that we can mail out if we don't have a list and we don't even have staff that can do it. I think it's a good note. That's really why we focused our energies on Stamps Teach. What we wanted to do is use an educator, a trusted adult who we could send information to and let them be the on-site teacher of what's happening. And Kathy, you have access to a microphone, so you certainly can brag about the work that you and Kathleen do. But we reach thousands of children every year and get in touch with educators on a regular basis to really promote this program. And so can we grow it? Sure. But it's got to be, you don't want to just dump a box or information passively into someone's hands. You've got to bring it to life. We did a great stamp chat yesterday, as a matter of fact, and I'd really encourage you folks to go and look at it from a professor from a college professor. Now, we've had K-12 educators do this as well, and that's really how to teach stamps to a group of people that, young people today. And so if you're a classroom educator in the K-12 environment, or you're an enthusiastic youth stamp collecting enthusiast, I really would encourage you to go back and look at what we've done there, talking to people who are practicing that on a daily basis.
And for our Young Stamp Collectors of America, Kathleen Edwards does a wonderful job of producing a monthly newsletter. It's done electronically. They're all available to our members on our C3A site, and anyone who participates in an activity that's posted for the month, Kathleen sends out stamps or other things to those young people, so they are getting mail in that way.
Scott, this is Greg. I did have a question, and I agree that the stamp chats and the evening movies are fantastic, and it's been a pleasure to listen into those things. And I notice all of the stamp chats almost immediately thereafter are uploaded to YouTube for viewing. Is there a way at the end of each of those that you could link a APS membership application? So people that watch that, once they watch one of those productions, they could seamlessly go and join the club?
That's an excellent question. I can't answer that question now, but I've got a note, and I'll talk with Tom and Ken about the possibility of doing something like that. For everybody else on the call, I'm going to single Greg out for a minute and embarrass him. Greg did a great discussion for us on the League of Nations, and for those of you who've seen his exhibits, they're wonderful, and I really do appreciate that. Greg's got a robust amount of information, and so we definitely want to get it back on again, because I think he could teach. Gosh, you could probably teach 2 or 3 more of these, Greg. And so I really do appreciate Greg's contribution to the stamp chats, and thank you very much for that. In terms of the application and other information, that's a good question, and one that we'll get back to you on.
Okay, thanks.
Scott, this is Michael Bloom.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, you were talking about the online summer seminars, and I was just wondering if we can leverage that to build membership by bundling paid classes with APS membership, where it becomes a no-brainer to join APS in order to get a discount on the courses, and to promote that widely so we reach an audience even internationally to help build membership.
Well, Michael, let me answer that. The courses or the sessions we're going to be offering through Summer Seminar Online are a members only benefit. So a person would have to become a member of the APS in order to attend any of them, except the free ones that would be offered by staff.
Thank you, Kathy.
And that, I mean, that's the kind of pricing mindset, Michael, we use for like on the road. By the time you pay as a non-member, you might as well join the APS and get the benefits of being a member, and you end up saving a little bit of money on the package deal. So, I mean, those are definitely things that we need to be looking at as we move into the frontier of digital education. Are there any other questions or comments? Okay.
Oh, Scott, I did have one more question.
Yes.
In the presentation, when you were going through some of this work of the APS, you mentioned, I think, that there'd be a $125,000 shortfall for this year. Did that take into consideration the loan or the grant that the Small Business the PPE grant that was given to us?
Yeah, that factors in. There are a variety of assumptions in there, but one of them includes the funding we'll use to offset. You know, I can't overstate the impact of not being able to generate revenue for the APS, and the lag now we're starting to see a little bit in the applications that are coming in. You know, those are critical importance to us. That $125,000, Greg, represents a deficit, if you will, of the operating budget. That doesn't mean we're going to default on payments or anything like that. But, you know, my goal was to get that to 0 by the end of the year. And granted, we do take some fairly stark realities into play in looking at how we're going to project out that budget. But I also think that'll help cushion us from unseen things that we haven't planned on right now. So, you know, it's sort of a dual-edged sword about whether or not that projection is going to work. Each month goes by gives us a better picture of how things are going because of the new circumstances. But you know, it's a very dramatic impact on the organization, and we want to be clear with people about that. So, like I said,
Right.
please shop
Please
shop at Stamp Store.
Absolutely. The second wave of federal monies that might come out, would we be eligible for a second wave of cash, or is that limited already?
No, in fact, one of the statements I made was the cap was lifted. That's really what we're talking about here, is an available cap of money was raised by $250 billion. The reality is, though, just based on the number of people who did not get funding in the first round of that, the application amounts out there outstanding are already greater than the $250 billion that Congress authorized in lifting the cap. So, you know, even if we could get a second bite of the apple, we'd have to get to the back of the line, and that line is already longer than what's available out there. So, but no, right now there is no plan for there to be a secondary relief plan for anyone who's applied for the loan already.
Okay, thanks.
Okay. Thank you all very much, and thanks to the staff for joining us. And we have one more item on the agenda. Hopefully this will be a fairly easy one. Kathy, if you could take it back and put up the resolution for Doris Wilson, I'd appreciate it. Do I need to stop sharing my screen? Kathy, are you there?
I am here. I'm sorry. I'm looking for it.
So while Kathy's bringing that resolution up, let me just share with everyone what's going on. Although I have tried, and I think Doris is on the call, although I have tried and I have prayed, Doris is finally reached the point where she's eligible and ready for retirement. This has been a tough year for saying goodbye to people. I've said hello and goodbye to so many people in my lifetime, you just sort of become immune to it. But in this case, Doris is a rare gem, and she, in 2000, she's been working here since 1990, but in 2003, probably without enough knowledge to say no, she was asked to become the graphic designer for the organization, even though that's not necessarily something that she had formal training in. And, I cannot overstate just how difficult it is to run through the graphic design layout of a magazine on a month-to-month basis and all of the other demands that are put on her. And, I can honestly say this, even with all of those demands and under the pressure that she often gets put under, Doris is always a great person to work with. Her creativity, her willingness to continue to expand her skill sets and learn new tricks has been unparalleled in this organization. Not to mention, she's just a great person, and probably one of the greatest people to work around. In the realm of large shoes, these are probably some of the largest that will need to be filled in this organization for a long time to come. And I want to personally thank Doris for really representing the best of our organization, whether it's been representing us at stamp shows, the work that she does here every day, the care that she's taken with the graphic design work, the deliberation she's taken with making sure that every time you receive a show email, it is Doris Wilson doing the work. She's working with the show organizers to put that together, but that email is put out by her, and the attention to detail that she goes through is a painstaking process. And Doris, your care of our organization and its members and the dealers and everyone else under the sun is truly been gratifying to watch. We have hired a new graphic designer in Chad Crowder, who lives in State College. He lives nearby and is a graduate of Penn State. I know that's a surprise to everybody on the call. And has worked for more than a decade, first with the Center Daily Times, the local paper, and then with State College Magazine, which unfortunately, as so many other publications have, hit hard times. And so their misfortune is our fortune. And Chad will be joining the team. Well, he is joining the team April 15th, and he's working with Doris right now to go through the process. So the resolution sort of speaks for itself. I just wanted to color that resolution with a little bit of a personal touch and tell you that I don't have the words to express how much I have enjoyed working with Doris. Probably one of the greatest joys of being here. And it was an honor for us last year to recognize her. Not only is she a member of the staff, but she's an APS member, and she earned her 25-year pin in Mesa, Arizona last year. I made her come to a stamp show, and because she's a doting grandmother, she insisted on it being the winter show, not the summer show, because obviously she'd have more time to spend with her grandchildren during the summer. And I know that even though the work demands are what they are, Doris puts in the time to make sure that she's showing up for Little League games, football games, and a variety of other things. And I can't express enough how much I enjoy it. I will stop now before I get emotional. But Doris, thank you very much for all that you have done for the APS. And this resolution, I think, barely scratches the surface of that. But it is in our way an attempt to show the gratitude of the commitment you've made to the APS over the last 30 years. And with that, I will. Bob, are you on the phone? All right, I'll be the presiding officer for him, or I guess one of the vice presidents can, but we need a motion from the APS. We need a motion in a second.
So moved, Rich Drews.
And a second.
I'll second.
Second.
Cheryl, that'll work. Okay. All those in favor vote aye.
Aye. Aye.
All those opposed, nay. Well, the ayes have it, unanimously adopted. Ken Grant for the APRL.
Yes, do we have a motion?
I'll move it. Hugh McMacken.
And a second?
I'll second. Kristen?
Thank you, Kristen. All those in favor of the resolution signify by saying aye.
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 Motion carries.
Thank you all very much for that. And if there are additional comments or questions, certainly you can ask them now. I don't know, Kathy, if we had any more questions come up in the chat, but if not, then I certainly think we can.
There
sorry,
is
go
one.
ahead.
It says, could you mention the programs that one would have to be an APS member to view? And that was again by James Capel. If you're talking specifically about summer seminar online, that would be any presentation that will be given specifically with stamp collecting content. And there would be a charge for those. 1 hour sessions will be $10 for members. Non-members cannot partake. Courses that are more sessions will be priced accordingly. The free ones would be things that advertise things that benefits of being a member, like buying and selling on Stamp Store, using the library, those sorts of things.
And James, just a piece of advice. If it's a more global issue, certainly reach out to Ken and he can provide you with all that information. So if you want to share that with members, you're a great and enthusiastic ambassador for us in Waltham. And so we certainly want to make sure that you are armed with all the information that you need to provide them with information. Okay. With that, we need a motion and a second to adjourn on the APS side.
So moved. Jeff Shapiro.
Second, Rich Drews.
Okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
The ayes have it.
Aye.
And a motion on the APRL side?
I'll make a motion to end meeting.
A second?
Sure. Greg will
Second, Hugh
second.
McMacken.
All right, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 I guess we're done.
Excellent. Thank you all very much for joining us. This is the first of many online meetings, and I appreciate everyone's cooperation and to getting there. And so with that, we'll call it quits.
Thanks, guys.
Stay safe, you all.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Take care, everyone. Thank you.